Tian Wei.
This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. A 5-member U.S. Congressional delegation visited Taiwan on Sunday and Monday on the heels of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to the island in early August. China has voiced strong opposition against the U.S. lawmakers' provocations. China's Eastern Theater Command doubled down on live fire drills around the waters and airspace of Taiwan Island on Monday. The PLA said it will take all necessary measures to firmly safeguard China's national sovereignty in pursuit of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. A Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson said the visit violated the One China principle and the 3 U.S.-China joint communiques, sending the wrong signal to Taiwan independence forces. The Defense Ministry said the U.S. is the troublemaker and the saboteur of peace across the Taiwan Strait. Earlier this month, the United Nations reiterated its support for the One China principle in response to Pelosi's visit to the region. So far, more than 160 countries have voiced support for China's efforts to firmly uphold its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, the nation has forged diplomatic relations with 181 countries on the basis of One China principle. What's behind the U.S. lawmakers' series of visits to Taiwan? How tough are China's countermeasures? In today's program, we are going to talk to 2 key Chinese military experts exclusively. Our program is also going live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, the CGTN app, and Sina Weibo as well. Now, let's loop in our panelists. You're watching World Insight. We have in our Beijing studio Major General Meng Xiangqing, who is coming from the National Defense University of the People's Liberation Army. Sir, welcome to the program. Meanwhile, joining us in Beijing, Mr. Zhang Junshe, Senior Research Fellow from the PLA Naval Research Academy. First of all, Mr. Meng, how do you understand the China's military actions right now in the area across the Taiwan Strait?
我们东部战区发言人呢表示，就是东部战区呢正在台岛
The spokesperson of the East Theater Command of the Chinese PLA said that China is conducting live ammunition combat patrol and drills on waters around Taiwan Island. If you watched closely, the spokesperson talked about 2 key words: combat patrol and live ammunition drills. What does combat patrol mean? It literally means a patrol that is combat ready. It's conducted in an all-weather scenario, and it's ready for real combat missions. Or the drill could be turned into real combat at any time. After the provocative visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan on August 2nd, the East Theater Command immediately announced a live ammunition drill. The PLA designated 6 zones around Taiwan Island as drill areas. By August 10th, the spokesperson of the Chinese PLA announced the military drill ended successfully. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, 5 lawmakers of the U.S. Congress made another provocative visit to Taiwan. So in response to the collusions between the U.S. and Taiwan, in particular, their actions undermining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, the East Theater Command conducted another round of deterrence drills.
这样一个情况。
Mr. Zhang, what about the Chinese Navy?
Well, the Chinese Navy took part in this series of joint military operations conducted by the Eastern Theater Command. This is a kind of joint military operations. The Chinese PLA Navy conducted the joint blockade and control of the Taiwan Island, and also took part in this strike on land targets, and also assault on surface targets, and also the air control missions. All the missions around the Taiwan Island, and now currently the Chinese PLA Navy warships are now patrolling and also conducting exercises and drills around the Taiwan island.
We need to take a look at in details what exactly the Chinese military doing. China's Eastern Theater Command forces lost no time carrying out 9-day military operations in waters and airspace around the Taiwan island. The operations began on the night of August the 2nd, when U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made a provocative visit to China's Taiwan region. The operations involving troops from various services were a test of the Chinese Armed Forces' integrated combat ability. The command will keep an eye on the situation across the Taiwan Strait while stepping up combat preparedness and patrols around the area. There's no let-up in China's live drills in Monday as 5 U.S. lawmakers did the rounds in Taiwan Island. Those are earlier some footages of how the Chinese military is conducting the live fire drills. But may I ask, is this going to be temporary or this is going to be long-term practices across the Taiwan Strait?
Sure.
Mr. Bong.
I should say this is becoming a routine drill. The spokesperson said that the drill is conducted in response to the U.S.-Taiwan collusion, to the attempts of Taiwan independence, and to actions of the U.S. that severely undermine the red line and bottom line of the One China principle. So that's why our drills lasted from the 2nd to the 10th of August, which was actually the first phase of the drill. And in response to the provocative visits by U.S. lawmakers, there is a new stage of drills. If you look at the specifics of the drills, we have joint closure control. We have attacks for sea targets. We have missiles launched from land, air-to-air combats. All these drill activities share several things in common. First, we managed to fully lock and encircle the island on the sea. This is so far the closest drill conducted near Taiwan Island.
How close are we to that already?
We designated 6 drill areas on the sea. If you compare that to the 1996 crisis on the Taiwan Strait, there are some major differences. The first one is that conventional military drills were organized near China's east coastline. But this time, all the 6 drill areas are near Taiwan Island. Secondly, for the first time, we've encircled the island on the sea. These 6 drill areas on the sea are just like a giant belt when connected together. One key knot is to the southwest near Kaohsiung, so it creates a deterrent. It's like closing the door to beat the dog. Another major difference is that for the first time, the target range area of the drill is set to the east of Taiwan Island. The live ammunition drill actually covered the whole airspace of Taiwan, breaking the airspace under the protection of the Patriot missile defense system and hitting accurately the target despite the Aegis system. Also, for the first time, we've organized the drill with the aircraft carrier formation. It was a strong deterrent, and we've built a full-dimensional combat system on the sea.
Mr. Zhang, is the latest, the current operation different from the earlier round?
There are some similar operations currently conducted compared with the previous round of operations. For instance, the Navy warships is also conducting patrols and also exercises, and also joined the joint blockade and control of the island. I think during these exercises, I think the Chinese PLA Navy warships have done 3 things. First is that many of the warships crossed the so-called midline of the Taiwan Strait. That means we, the PLA, doesn't recognize the so-called midline of the Taiwan Strait. We ignore this. And this can, I think the Taiwan Strait can't stop us from upholding national sovereignty and territorial integrity. And second, we can see from the picture that our warships this time sailed much closer to the coast of the Taiwan island. And the third thing is that we send our aircraft carriers for deterrence exercises. And we know that aircraft carrier group usually include the nuclear-powered submarine. That means our nuclear submarines also took part in this
What does
exercise.
that mean when nuclear-powered submarines is in that region?
About the nuclear-powered submarine inside the aircraft carrier group, we know that its first and main task is to protect the aircraft carrier. It has the nuclear power, so it can sail a long away, and so it can better protect the aircraft carrier, and then it can fight against any warships or other assets that will attack the aircraft carrier, and also will attack China. So I think it is defensive mission. That means that will serve a deterrence to the outside intervention force and also the Taiwan independent separate forces. We want to crush any outside intervention, and also the separatist forces that want to split the motherland. That's not we allow to happen.
As the military operation goes on in the region, how should we understand when others are asking the question, so what if there were crossfires? What if there were quote-unquote accidents? Who is going to be responsible for bringing the situation to the brink? Now, how would you answer that, Mr. Meng?
Because it was directly triggered by the nasty visit of Pelosi to Taiwan. Prior to that, the Chinese government voiced its strong warnings not once, but multiple times to the U.S. The U.S. offered many excuses, saying it was entirely a congressional decision. But the U.S. Congress is one very important organ of the U.S. government. It bears the responsibility in observing the 3 joint communiques between China and the United States. It has undermined regional peace and stability. Against such backdrops, security risks were pushed up, and there is naturally the danger of crossfire. But once that happens, the U.S. should take sole responsibility.
Earlier, there were the U.S. side talking about the so-called establishing the guardrails against any danger in the relations between China and the United States. Now, some suggest that this is going to be one of those steps backward as a result of Chinese military operation. But I do know that both of you disagree with that. Tell me more about why this is not the type of guardrail that both sides could have in mind. Why the real kind of guardrail that would serve security for both sides is most important.
The guardrail to China-U.S. relations must have one very important prerequisite, and that is the respect for China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Taiwan issue stands at the very core of China's national interest. Stamping on China's bottom line and undermining China's interests are in no way helpful. Secondly, the guardrail for China-U.S. relations must be built on mutual respect. Only on this basis can we build an effective guardrail. In the past, the 2 countries have set up multiple exchange mechanisms. These are very good dialogue mechanisms to avoid confrontation. The encounter rules at sea, for example, are negotiated after many rounds of consultations. China has made great efforts and showed its utmost sincerity on this issue. Even prior to the crisis, there were negotiations going on about the encounter rules at sea. These 3 mechanisms could have served as the platform for the guardrail. But sadly, they are ruined by the U.S.
Mr. Zhang.
Yeah, I think the United States words are not matching the needs are not matching its words, and they are not keeping its promise. First, for the guardrails, so-called guardrails, we can see that the MMCA, which has been cancelled by the Chinese side this time. Every time we talk about the security issues during the MMCA, the United States actually is using MMCA as a platform to find excuse for its provocations against Chinese core interests. For instance, it sent its fighters and also reconnaissance aircraft fly around Chinese coast, and also sent its warships to conduct the so-called freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea. It sailed much closer to the Chinese side, and it provoked China's interest, and it provoked actual safety issues. Also, we say that if the United States wants guardrail, it should stop such provocations against China. This is I think the essence of the so-called guardrails.
美国的护栏之说，我认为从本质上来看呀。
The guardrail proposed by the U.S. is one that allows it to conduct close-up reconnaissance along our coast, to seek navigation hegemony under the pretense of navigation freedom, to have the right to challenge China, yet disallowing China to fight back. I believe these are the fundamental agenda behind its guardrail proposal. So we need to debunk the lie and define what the guardrail should be like.
尊重一个中国原则，相互尊重这样一个基础上。
The guardrail must be built on the basis of the One China principle and mutual respect.
不许百姓点灯的所谓护栏。
Agree?
Yes, the United States is constantly making provocations against China, against China's core interests, but they don't want China to launch countermeasures like these measures we are just conducting. So it's not normal, or it's not fair for China. And so the United States, on one side, is creating the so-called guardrail. On the other side, it is provoking China. It's making political and military provocations against China. So the guardrails are useless, actually.
Both of you has illustrated very clearly the stance coming from the Chinese military. And many also wonder, how is the Chinese military reading the politics inside the United States, and also reading the geopolitics, for example, that between China and the US? And how is that reflected in the current Chinese military's understanding of the issue and your actions, Mr. Meng?
其实我认为啊，就是中国崛起是一个大趋势。随着中国
I believe China's rise is a big trend. We insist on developing peacefully. Our goal is to improve the quality of life for the Chinese people and not to seek global hegemony. We've never sought hegemony. We have not attempted to challenge the position of the U.S. So that's why I believe the U.S. is having a very twisted mindset towards China.
应该说是极为扭曲的一
May I
种心
follow
态。
up? Some have been describing China as, quote, aggressive, quote, assertive. How do you see, from the Chinese military's perspective,
是这样。
these kinds of adjectives?
首先，美国是一种焦虑感。
The United States is in great anxiety, believing China's rise would pose a threat to the U.S. This is completely groundless. Go check out China's culture and history over thousands of years. China has always been a peaceful country. It has never waged war over other countries. All the wars we've fought in history were self-defensive in nature, following foreign aggression. If you look at the Chinese culture, you'd find out how it emphasizes man is an integral part of nature, and the concept of peaceful coexistence. To just give you one example, Chinese characters. I told many foreign friends that the Chinese characters can reflect its culture of peace. Chinese philosophy believes war is to end conflict.
武器保卫国土，止戈为武。
May I ask, is the Chinese military for war or for peace?
Of course, for
Mr.
peace.
Meng.
我们是为了和平。
We're for peace. The Chinese PLA over the years has made great contributions to safeguarding world peace. We provided many public good in security. For example, Among the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, China is the biggest contributor to the UN peacekeeping force.
Yes, I think now the question is that the United States should take a correct attitude toward China's development and China's military development, and also take a correct attitude toward China's reactions against the United States provocations on the seas and also on the Taiwan issue and other issues. Actually, China is on the defensive. The United States is on the offensive. The United States is always making provocations against China, and China has to make some reactions against the U.S. provocations. And we can see that during the last several years, the United States sent warships to sail across the Taiwan Strait and also conduct the so-called freedom of navigation operations near in the territorial seas of the Chinese side. But that's kind of provocations against China. So I think if the United States stop such provocations, everything is okay. And China and the Chinese people really want to have a healthy and stable relationship with the United States.
Of course, the midterm election is coming up in the U.S. Politicians want to make sure they have their political capital and the so-called legacy. How do you see from the Chinese minister's perspective, is the quote-unquote the card of Taiwan is being played in that regard, Mr. Zhang?
Well, I think the politicians in the United States should care for its national interest, not for its own personal capital or personal political heritage, and also should take a wide view on the Sino-U.S. relationship. It should not make the provocations against China by visiting Taiwan, which is a part of China.
But they say, oh, maybe China should understand that we have problems at home, you know. So, Mr. Meng, what does that mean, do you see? They are trying to put the Taiwan card in the overall array of issues they are trying to make use of, shall we say, politically.
其实你去看看美国200多年的历史啊。
If you look at the over 200-year history of the United States, in the first 100 years, it adopted an isolationist strategy. For the second centenary, it adopted an expansionist policy, in particular, driven by such policy after World War II. The U.S. became the world's only superpower. Today, it wants to maintain hegemony over the world. That's why it's so much into playing the role of world policeman, despite its many problems at home. Due to the rise of populism and nationalism, the U.S. shifts all the blame externally for all the problems at home. If the U.S. doesn't change its Cold War mentality and hopelessly cling to its hegemony, it would ruin not only China-U.S. relations, but also undermine regional stability and world peace. It will lead to tragic consequences. There are countless such examples throughout history.
对世界和平、对地区稳定都将带来灾难性的后果。其实历史上有很多这样的例子。
Mr. Zhang.
Yes, for a long time, actually, since the end of the World War II, the United States has been using Taiwan as a chess piece in its strategy to contain China, and always using Taiwan to contain China. I don't think such attempt will succeed. And the key issue is that the United States stop using Taiwan to contain China and don't make other political provocations against China. I think this is the key point.
Now we have only 1 minute left. I really wonder, finally, do you have anything to say with anyone who is watching our program either online or on TV all over the world? Maybe they don't know the issue very well, but what do you want to say to them from as an individual in the Chinese military? Mr. Meng, briefly.
The Taiwan question is purely an internal affair of China, but the U.S. has been interfering with China's internal affairs and meddling with the Taiwan issue. It's a key external factor why the Taiwan issue hasn't been solved today. No matter how hard one tries to interfere, China would definitely achieve its national reunification because this is the trend and it's what the people demand.
Mr. Zhang.
I think the Taiwan issue is China's core interest, and the vast majority of the countries in the world, more than 181 countries, have recognized the One China principle. I think China is taking reactions against U.S. provocations. This is the fact.
Zhang Junshe from PLA Naval Research Academy and Meng Xiangqing from the National Defense University of China. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.